Hello YouTube! So I'm a bunch of beech trees in a city, which is interesting since beech trees are one of the most quintessential forest forming trees. But okay. And yeah, there should be a lecture near somewhere, so we're gonna listen to that. Wait, I wanna see if I wanna try something funny. Aside from just the lecture. Oh. I wanna see if I can be something in this spot. Or, well, I guess it's called in English. Sorry, just said the Dutch word for it. Oh, I'm a tree bed, okay. Oops. I thought this was a well, you know, down into the sewage. Okay, well, let's listen to the lecture.
The process of growth, the basic process of biology, is one in which lower orders are always being superseded by higher orders. But the lower order can never figure out, or only very rarely figure out, what the higher order is that's taking over. And may see it as a terrible threat, as total disaster, as the very end, but can never be aware that the principle of growth always has and always will continue. Because that's what's going on. But you never know what the next step is going to be. Because if you did know, you wouldn't take it. Because it would already be past. Do you understand this? That any certainly known future is an event of which we can say, you've had it. And in that sense, it's past. When we play a game, the outcome of the game becomes certain. We at that point cancel the game and begin a new one. Because the whole zest of the thing, which takes me back to the idea that this whole thing is a hide-and-seek game, is that you don't know what the next order coming up is.
That is actually interesting, because in a sense, he is correct. Again, I want to be... in a sense he is correct. You know, in a sense, growth means that there will be a new order, and that new order may be unknown and frightening. And that much, yes, is correct. But... I tried pressing 8, it didn't work. Maybe now. No. But in a sense that is true. But this idea that you never know what the next step is gonna be, or that the lower order never knows what the next step's gonna be. I guess in a sense it's true. But this idea that knowing things is already inherent, you know, is... Hey, skunk. Oh. But This idea that there must always be a higher order is not necessarily true. Especially since I think the concept of an order is already weird. And the concept of saying that, okay, well, this is a lower order and this is a higher order, does not actually correspond to the way these things are understood by modern science. Because modern science has basically said, like, modern science, not matter science, but modern science has basically said, like, yeah, well, most modern scientists say, well, there is not really like a way of ranking them in order. There is maybe the next thing, but that does not necessarily mean it is of a higher or of a lower order. If I leave a heathland alone for long enough, it will turn into a beech forest. That I know. But I cannot say, oh well, that means the beech forest is higher or than the heathland. No. Because it's not. That's not really how it works. And the heathland certainly does not know that it will that there will be a beech forest, but the beech forest does not know it's a beech forest. So you cannot really say, oh well, it knows anything. Even the individual heath bushes or the individual beech trees, they do not know anything. You know, well, maybe they know how to grow. You can argue that. You know, they know how to be a tree, but they don't know that they are a tree, you know, or that they are a bush. So I kind of, in one sense, yes, there is always a form of growth, but to say it necessarily involves higher or lower orders, or that it necessarily involves knowing anything, I do not. Knowing or not knowing anything, I do not think that's true. As far as I understand science, but okay, let's see what he has to say.
We have this rather myopic way of looking at things, and we screen out from attention anything that is not immediately important to a scanning system based on sensing danger. But quite obviously, you as a complete individual are much more than the scanning system. You are in relationships with the external world that on the whole are incredibly harmonious. The energies of life in the form of temperature, light, air, and food, and so on, are streaming through you all at this moment in the most magnificently harmonious way. When anything is constant, it says, okay, that's safe, it's in the bag, you needn't pay attention to that anymore. And therefore, we eliminate systematically from our awareness all the gorgeous things that are going on all the time, and instead only become focused on the things, the troublesome things that might happen to upset it. Which is all right, but we make too much of it. We make so much of it that we identify our very selves, I, ego, with the radar, with the troubleshooter. And that's only a tiny fragment of one's total being.
I actually agree with this. Like, it's one of the first times that I can say, well, I almost 100% agree with what he's saying. Despite me not being a philosopher, despite me being very, very skeptical of this game. Despite all that, I do, for once, agree almost 100% to what this guy is saying. Like, we are in part our natural sensing mechanism of the world. You know, it's kind of ties into the nature versus nurture argument, by the way. Like, because you know, our troubleshooting mechanism is in fact, you know, the nature, the thing that's naturally within us. And our relationships with the world are what shape us, you know. There's this basic human shape that in part is the troubleshooting mechanism, in part some other things that may not necessarily be us perceiving possible dangers, but that are very similar to that. Funny how this green continent is entirely one big suburb area. Ooh, windmill. I'm feeling very patriotic now. But yeah, I think the idea that we are not necessarily all that we not because yeah, in part the way we perceive things is based upon is it dangerous or not. That is a large part of how the human nervous system, how our way of sensing the world around us works. We evaluate whether or not something is dangerous, whether or not it may hurt us, and if we decide, well, it won't, then we tend to ignore it. So we tend to ignore beautiful things, which, if you ask me, is a very negative thing, you know? Finally, the Friesland cow. Yeah, Holstein. Which is, by the way, a part Dutch breed of cow. It was a cross between Dutch and German breeds. So I'm kind of proud of it. Yeah, I think the idea that we do not always notice what's beautiful and what's good because our instincts are based upon noticing what's dangerous, that is in a way our nature. And then our nurture. Our nurture is basically what that nature makes us, you know. what well, what did nature makes us when we interact with the world around us. Because we are not merely how shall I put this right? We are not merely our brains and our sensing organs that we are born with. We are not merely our experiences in the world, we are a combination of those. And yes, our brain is hardwired by evolution to notice dangerous things first. Because, well, the things that did not know, the animals that did not notice the dangerous things first, they just died off because of the dangerous things. Is it a cat? I guess. I really like this whole bunch of animals, but yeah. So in a sense we are both. We are and he says it rather more philosophically, you know? A biologist will explain it the way I explain it, or perhaps even more scientifically, using the correct language. Perhaps even more philosophically, you know, or even more scientifically with the correct language, but that's essentially what the argument boils down to. Are you the way you are hardwired by nature, or the way you are shaped by nurture? And there's some psychologists and biologists who will really say, oh well, you're nature, or well, you're nurture. But most people, and I think this philosopher is right about that, I am among them, this philosopher is among them, will say, well, you're part. You are part, you know, you are both nature and you are both and nurture. And how much it affects you, well, it depends, and how much individual parts of your nature affect you also depends. It differs from person to person, and it differs from interpretation of the human to interpretation. But yeah, that's basically how it works. So yeah, to sum it all up, yes, for one of the first time I actually really agree with what this guy is saying. And yeah, with that, feeling very patriotic to have been basically the stereotypical Dutch cow and a windmill. I say see you later.